I sat in my Audi RS e-tron GT outside my parents' sprawling Tudor mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, deliberately leaving the $145,000 car around the corner where they couldn't see it. My mother's text had been perfectly crafted to wound. Family meeting. 7 p.m. sharp. We need to discuss your situation. My situation. That's what they've been calling my career choices for the past 3 years. Ever since I left my prestigious position as marketing director at Wallace & Sons to strike out on my own. Or as they saw it, to become a secretary. My phone buzzed. Jessica, my actual executive assistant, was updating me about the Morgan Stanley acquisition. Final offer, $2.3 billion. They won't go higher. I smiled, typing back, accept. Have legal prepare the documents. And Jessica? Perfect timing on that entrance we discussed. Of course, Miss Thompson. 7:30 p.m. sharp. I'll bring the Forbes advance copy. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, deliberately dressed down in a simple black blazer from Zara and minimal makeup. Let them think I couldn't afford better. The deception made tonight's revelation sweeter. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in her Channel suit, perfect highlights framing her disapproving frown. Emily, darling, you're late. By 1 minute, Mom. Details matter in business, dear. She ushered me inside. Something you might want to consider in your current position. The living room was set up like an intervention. Dad in his power spot by the fireplace, still wearing his CEO suit from Wallace & Sons. My older brother Michael and his wife Diana on the imported Italian leather sofa. Even Aunt Patricia had been called in, perched on the antique wingback chair like a vulture in Verses. Love the blazer. Diana air-kissed my cheek. Zara's having a sale? Trying to be sustainable, I replied, watching her horror at the thought of wearing off-the-rack clothing. Let's get started. Dad cleared his throat. We're here because we're worried about you, Emily. About your choices. Michael nodded gravely. 3 years ago, you had everything. Director of Marketing at Wallace & Sons. That penthouse on Park Avenue, Stewart. Ah yes, Stewart. The investment banker they practically planned my wedding to before I called it off to start my company. The same Stewart whose firm I'd outbid last week for a $500 million tech acquisition. Not that they knew that. And now, Dad gestured vaguely. Living in that tiny apartment in Brooklyn, working as some secretary, executive assistant, Mom corrected, as if that made it better. At some startup no one's heard of, Michael added. What's it called again? Thompson Digital Solutions? I bit back a smile. The company he'd never heard of had just been valued at $14.2 billion. Something like that. Barbara's daughter just made partner at Goldman Sachs. Aunt Patricia chimed in. Youngest female partner in their history. She paused meaningfully. That could have been you. I checked my watch. 7:24 p.m. 6 minutes until Jessica's entrance. Have you even told us what this company actually does? Mom complained. All this secrecy, these long hours, and what do you have to show for it? We found your salary range online. Michael pulled out his phone. $65,000 to $85,000 for an executive assistant in New York. Really, Emily? I make that in bonuses. Dad stood, assuming his CEO stance. This ends now. We've arranged for you to interview at Wallace & Sons next week. Junior marketing position. Less than you had before, but it's a start. And Stewart's still single, Mom added hopefully. He just made managing director. I'm happy where I am, I said quietly. Happy? Dad's voice rose. You're a disappointment. Working as some secretary when you could be. The door opened. Jessica walked in, impeccably dressed in Armani, carrying the advance copy of Forbes and a leather portfolio. Miss Thompson? Sorry to interrupt, but your jet is ready for tomorrow's Tokyo meeting, and the Morgan Stanley acquisition papers need your signature. Also, Forbes wants to confirm the cover photo for next week's 40 Under 40 issue. The room froze. Mom's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Michael's phone slipped from his fingers. Dad stood speechless, the word disappointment still hanging in the air. The acquisition papers. I held out my hand. Are those the final numbers we discussed? Yes, Miss Thompson. $2.3 billion. All cash offer. Diana choked on her champagne. Billion? Thompson Digital Solutions, I said, signing the documents with my Mont Blanc pen, is actually just a subsidiary. The parent company is Thomson Global Technologies. We're the world's leading AI and machine learning corporation. I paused, looking at my father. You might have heard of us. We just bought controlling interest in Wallace & Sons. The Mont Blanc hit the acquisition papers with a final flourish. Behind me, I could hear Mom's wine glass shatter on the imported marble floor. Jessica, please have legal process these immediately. And about tomorrow's Tokyo meeting. I stood up, straightening my Zara blazer. Let's take the Gulfstream G800 instead of the G600. It's going to be a long week. Of course, Miss Thompson. And about that dinner with Elon Musk next Thursday. Reschedule. Tell him I'm having a family dinner that night. I turned to my shell-shocked family. That is, if everyone's free. We had a lot to discuss about Wallace & Sons' new direction. The silence was deafening. Then from the sofa, Michael whispered, CEO. My little sister is a CEO. Actually, Jessica handed me the Forbes magazine. According to this cover story, she's the queen of AI. How Emily Thompson built a $14 billion empire while her family thought she was just a secretary. I smiled at my father, still frozen by the fireplace. So, Dad, about that junior marketing position. I think I'll pass. The next morning, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of a gleaming skyscraper in Hudson Yards, watching New York City wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. The Thomson Global Technologies logo glowed softly on the wall behind my desk, visible from most of Lower Manhattan. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since last night. Mom? Emily, please call us. We need to talk. Michael. Sis, about that junior analyst position I've been wanting. Diana. Just saw the Forbes preview online. Always knew you had potential. Dad, no messages. Jessica appeared with my morning coffee and market briefings. Your father's been in the Wallace & Sons lobby for 2 hours. Security wants to know how to handle it. I pulled up the lobby camera feed. There he stood, Richard Thompson Sr., still in his CEO suit, but somehow looking smaller than yesterday. The mighty head of Wallace & Sons, now technically my employee, waiting like any other visitor. Have him escorted up, I said, then added, and Jessica, hold all calls except Tokyo. While waiting, I studied the collection of artifacts on my office wall, mementos of the journey my family never knew about. My first patent certificate from age 23, the check from my first major client, a photograph of me signing the lease on our first real office, back when Thompson Digital was just 5 people in a WeWork space. The door opened. Dad stepped in, then stopped, taking in the vast office with its commanding views, the multiple screens displaying real-time market data, the digital art worth millions, and the subtle signals of power I'd carefully cultivated. "Your mother couldn't sleep last night," he said finally. "The Italian marble is probably still dented from her wine glass." He winced. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what, Dad? That I was building something revolutionary while you were all busy pitying me." I gestured to a chair. "Or that I bought Wallace & Sons to protect it from your outdated management style." He sat heavily. "The board, they knew. The board voted unanimously for the acquisition. Your company's value dropped 40% in 2 years, Dad. The market's shifting to AI-integrated solutions, and Wallace & Sons is still operating like it's 1985. So all this time, when we thought you were working as a executive assistant," I supplied. "Yes, though technically, I was running global operations for an AI empire, building partnerships with tech giants, developing patents that are reshaping entire industries." I paused. "But you never asked what I actually did. You were too busy being embarrassed by my situation." He pulled out his phone, showing me the Bloomberg article that had just dropped. Emily Thompson, the stealth CEO who built a billion-dollar empire in secret. "There's a quote here," he said quietly, "from Elon Musk, calling you the most innovative mind in AI development. The same Elon Musk who's having dinner with you next Thursday. Wednesday now, actually. Thursday is the Wallace & Sons board meeting. First order of business. Voting on new leadership." The color drained from his face. "You're firing me?" "Retiring you, Dad, with a very generous package. The company needs fresh direction." "And Michael? He's been groomed to take over." "Michael," I interrupted, "lost $50 million on that failed Asian expansion last year. His grooming consisted of golf games and nepotism." Jessica's voice came through the intercom. "Miss Thompson, Tokyo is ready for the merger call, and the Bloomberg reporter is here for your exclusive." Dad stood, straightening his tie, a nervous habit I'd seen countless times growing up. "Emily, about last night, the things we said. You called me a disappointment, Dad, in front of the entire family, because I was just a secretary instead of following your prescribed path. I was wrong." "Yes, you were." I turned to the window, watching a private helicopter, mine, land on our building's helipad. You know what the worst part was. Not the insults or the condescension. It was that none of you, not once in 3 years, asked me if I was happy, if I was building something I believed in. You just assumed I'd failed because I wasn't following your definition of success. And now," his voice was small, "now that we know." I turned back, letting him see the full weight of what I'd become. "Now you get to watch from the sidelines. The Bloomberg reporter is here to cover the Wallace & Sons acquisition. Tomorrow, everyone will know that your disappointing daughter now owns the company you spent 40 years building. The family legacy is safe, just not in the hands you expected." I picked up a folder from my desk. "These are the terms of your retirement. Very generous compensation, board emeritus status, full benefits, but operational control ends next week." He took the folder with trembling hands. "All this time, you were planning this?" "No, Dad. I was building something extraordinary. Buying Wallace & Sons was just good business sense." I checked my watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a merger to negotiate with Tokyo." As he reached the door, he turned back. "Your mother? She wanted me to ask about Sunday dinner. I'll have Jessica send a car. 7 o'clock. And Dad? Tell Michael not to bother asking about that analyst position. His trading record doesn't meet our standards." After he left, Jessica brought in the morning's acquisition reports. "Your brother's been calling every investment bank in the city, trying to verify your net worth." I smiled, remembering Michael's smirk when he quoted my supposed $85,000 salary. "Send him our latest SEC filing. Let him do the math himself. And the Wallace & Sons board packet? Distribute it tomorrow. Let them spend one more day thinking they work for Richard Thompson Sr." I picked up the Forbes magazine, my cover photo staring back confidently. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them discover exactly how wrong they've been. The intercom buzzed. "Tokyo is holding, Ms. Thompson." I straightened my actual Armani blazer, no more Zara needed, and turned to the screens where some of Asia's most powerful executives waited. Time to show them what a secretary can do. The Wallace & Sons boardroom fell silent as I walked in exactly 1 week later. Gone was the Zara blazer, replaced by a perfectly tailored Channel suit. 15 board members sat around the mahogany table, my father at the head, for the last time. Michael sat at Dad's right hand, his usual smirk replaced by a tightened jaw. The SEC filing I'd sent him had revealed my net worth, $8.2 billion, more than the entire Thompson family combined, multiplied by 50. "Good morning," I said, taking my seat opposite Dad. "Before we begin, I believe there are some organizational changes to discuss." "Now wait just a minute." Michael stood up, his face reddening. "You can't just walk in here and—" "Actually, I can." I nodded to Jessica, who distributed leather portfolios to each board member. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Thompson Global Technologies owns 67% of Wallace & Sons voting shares. And as CEO of Thompson Global, I'm implementing immediate changes. "This is our family company," Michael sputtered. "Dad, tell her she can't." "Sit down, Michael," Dad said quietly, already knowing what was coming. "Let's review your performance, shall we?" I connected my laptop to the projector. Under current management, Wallace & Sons has lost 40% of its market value. Failed expansion into Asia. $50 million loss. Failed digital transformation. $30 million wasted. Client retention rate dropping to 60%. The board members shifted uncomfortably. These weren't new numbers to them. But most concerning, I continued, is this. A new slide appeared. Internal emails showing systematic discrimination against female executives, including directives to maintain traditional leadership dynamics. Several board members glanced away. They'd approved those policies. "That's taken out of context," Michael protested. "We were preserving company culture. The culture that rejected my marketing proposals 3 years ago?" I pulled up another email. "Or the culture that called my AI integration plan cute and ambitious." Dad's face paled. He'd written that email. Here's what happens next. I stood up, commanding the room just as Dad had taught me, though never expecting I'd use these lessons against him. Richard Thompson Sr. retires, effective immediately. Michael Thompson's position is terminated, also immediately. The board will be restructured with a focus on technological innovation and diversity. "You can't fire me." Michael slammed his hand on the table. "I'm family." Exactly why I should. I pulled up his trading records. These unauthorized risks you took, under my leadership, they'll trigger an SEC investigation. Would you prefer that, or a quiet resignation with a generous severance package? The room went deadly quiet. Michael's face turned from red to white. You're destroying Dad's legacy. He tried one last time. No, Michael, I'm saving it. Wallace & Sons was 3 years from bankruptcy. Your traditional values were killing a 100-year-old company. Want to know what your sister, the secretary, did in the same 3 years? Jessica dimmed the lights. On the screen, Thomson Global Technologies' growth chart appeared, climbing like a rocket. Market cap, $14.2 billion. Client retention, 98%. Profit margins triple the industry standard. And this morning, we announced a partnership with Tesla for next-generation AI integration. That's why Elon keeps rescheduling dinner. One of the board members whistled softly. Another was already updating his LinkedIn profile. Dad, Michael looked desperately at our father. Say something. But Dad just sat there, finally seeing me clearly. Not as his disappointing daughter, but as the business leader he'd always wanted, just not in the way he'd imagined. The severance packages are generous, I continued. Health insurance, stock options, comfortable retirement for Dad. Michael, you'll receive 2 years' salary, provided you sign the non-disclosure agreement. Your trading records stay private. And if we refuse, Michael's voice cracked. Then the SEC gets very interested in your Asian expansion decisions. Those missing funds. I found them. Michael slumped in his chair. He'd embezzled millions, thinking no one would notice. But I'd noticed everything, documenting each violation while building my own empire. The cars will take you home. I gestured to the waiting town cars outside. Your offices have already been packed. But first, I placed one last document on the table. Dad needs to sign the leadership transition papers. Dad picked up the Mont Blanc, the same one I'd used to sign the acquisition papers in their living room. His hand trembled slightly. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. The small apartment? The secretary job? The apartment is real. I own the building. The secretary job was CEO from day one. I just let you see what you wanted to see. Why? Because 3 years ago, you all made it clear that my ideas weren't welcome here. So I built something better. Something that will take Wallace & Sons into the future, with or without the Thompson men. He signed the papers. Miss Thompson, Jessica appeared at the door. The press is ready for the announcement. Thank you, Jessica. I gathered my things, then paused. Oh, and Michael? That analyst position you wanted? The answer's still no. We only hire on merit. As I walked out, I heard one board member whisper, Did you see the Tesla deal numbers? Billions. Another replied, Forget that. Did you see her signature? She's been signing CEO for 3 years, right under their noses. In the elevator down to the press conference, Jessica handed me the latest market updates. Wallace & Sons stock was already up 30% on acquisition news. Thomson Global had gained another $1 billion in value since morning. Your mother called again, she said. About Sunday dinner? I smiled, thinking of the Forbes magazines I'd had delivered to every country club in Greenwich. By Sunday, every social circle that had whispered about my failure would know the truth. Tell her I'll be there, I said as the elevator doors opened to a wall of cameras. After all, I'm bringing a new family tradition, success on my own terms. Sunday dinner at the Thompson mansion felt different now. The same imported crystal gleamed, the same Limoges china graced the table, but the power dynamics had shifted seismically. Mom had spent 3 hours with her personal chef preparing my childhood favorites, a peace offering wrapped in puff pastry and truffle sauce. I arrived deliberately early, having spent the morning closing a $5 billion deal from my office. The Thomson Global Technologies stock had jumped another 15% after the Tesla partnership announcement. Dad's retirement package had just gained several million in value. Not that he was celebrating. "Emily, darling." Mom rushed forward as I entered, then stopped awkwardly, unsure how to greet this new version of her daughter. The CEO version. The billionaire version. "Hi, Mom." I handed her a gift bag. "From Milan. I remembered you loved their scarves." She pulled out the limited edition Hermes silk, her hands trembling slightly. "We saw you on CNBC this morning. With Warren Buffett. Just a quick interview about market trends." I didn't mention that I'd flown back on my private jet specifically for this dinner. Let them wonder about my schedule, for once. Dad sat in his study, staring at the Wall Street Journal where my face graced the cover. Tech Stealth Queen. How Emily Thompson revolutionized AI while playing secretary. The article detailed my journey, including every project Wallace and Sons had rejected before I struck out on my own. "The board ratified all the changes," he said without looking up. "Unanimous vote. They're pragmatic. Thomson Global's technology will increase their bonuses tenfold." "And Michael?" "Accepted the severance package. Had to, after our forensic audit found more discrepancies." I sat across from him. "He's lucky I'm keeping it quiet." Mom appeared with drinks. My favorite whiskey, I noticed. She'd been doing her research. "Diana called," she said carefully. They're getting divorced. After the SEC investigation. Michael's trading records weren't the only ones I found. I sipped the whiskey. Diana's been insider trading for years, using Michael's access. The doorbell rang. Mom froze. That must be Aunt Patricia. She insisted on coming. Perfect. I smiled. She should see this too. Aunt Patricia swept in wearing new designer labels, clearly purchased after learning of my success. "Emily, darling, I always told everyone you were the clever one." "Really?" I pulled out my phone. "Want to hear the recording from last week? When you called me a disappointment?" The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. That was a mistake, like telling Barbara's daughter she could have my office at Wallace and Sons. I raised an eyebrow. "By the way, Goldman Sachs rescinded her partner offer after finding out about her involvement in Michael's Asian deals." Mom's hands shook as she served dinner. The conversation stayed superficial, safe topics like weather and wine vintages, until Dad finally asked the question they'd all been avoiding. "Why didn't you tell us what you were building?" I set down my fork. "Remember my first marketing presentation at Wallace and Sons? I proposed integrating AI into our client services. You laughed. Called it cute that I thought I understood technology." "We were wrong," he admitted. "Yes, but instead of fighting to prove myself, I decided to show you. Every patronizing comment, every dismissive gesture, it just fueled me to build something bigger. Something that would make Wallace and Sons look like a small-town operation. And now," Mom asked quietly, "now that we know, now you get to watch. Watch as I transform the company you thought was too traditional to change. Watch as the daughter you dismissed as a secretary revolutionizes an entire industry." I turned to Aunt Patricia. "Watch as I accomplish everything you said I couldn't." My phone buzzed. Jessica, right on schedule. Ms. Thompson, Beijing approved the merger, and Time magazine wants you for next month's cover. The table fell silent. Also, Mr. Musk confirmed dinner for Wednesday. His team loved the prototype. Dad's hand tightened on his wine glass. The prototype, my latest AI innovation, was worth more than Wallace and Son's entire market cap. Thank you, Jessica. Send the jet to Beijing tomorrow. I'll review the contracts personally. After I hung up, Mom tried again. We're having a family reunion next month. Your cousins would love to see you. The same cousins who mocked my secretary job on Facebook. Forward me their resumes. My HR team is always looking for entry-level positions. Emily, Dad's voice cracked slightly. We were wrong. Completely wrong. But you're still our daughter. Am I? Because last week, I was a disappointment, a failure, an embarrassment to the Thompson name. I stood up. Now I'm the most successful Thompson in history, and suddenly family matters. Please, Mom whispered. We want to make it right. I looked around the dining room at the trappings of success that had defined my childhood. The success they'd wanted for me, but only on their terms. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. Wallace and Sons will be fully integrated into Thompson Global Technologies. Dad's retirement package is secure. Michael's secrets stay buried, provided he stays quiet. And you, I turned to my mother. You'll have to accept that your daughter isn't just successful. She's more successful than you ever imagined, on her own terms. And Sunday dinners? Mom asked hopefully. We'll see. My schedule's quite full between Tokyo, Beijing, and Silicon Valley. I checked my watch. A subtle Patek Philippe, worth more than their car. Speaking of which, I have a video call with Singapore in an hour. As I walked to the door, Dad called out, Emily? That AI proposal you made 3 years ago, I found it in my old files. It was brilliant. We were too blind to see it. I turned back one last time. No, Dad, you weren't blind. You just couldn't see past your own expectations. But that's okay. It made the view from the top so much sweeter. Outside, my driver held the door to the Maybach. Home, Miss Thompson? No. I smiled, thinking of the empire I'd built while they underestimated me. Take me to the office. Success doesn't sleep, and neither do I. The car pulled away, leaving behind a family finally realizing that their greatest achievement wasn't the son they'd groomed for success, but the daughter they'd failed to see coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's exceeding every expectation they never thought you could meet.